Hello everyone and welcome to Age Club's Open Discussion Series. This week is all about music. My name is Greg Parmley. I'm the Managing Director of the International Live Music Conference. We also publish IQ Magazine, a trade magazine for the international live music business. I'm going to ask each of my fantastic assembled lineup of guest speakers to introduce themselves and I guess initially also just to sort of talk a little bit about the impacts that coronavirus has had on them individually as well over the last couple of months. Bengi, I can see your top left on my screen, so would you like to start?
Hi, my name is Bengi Ünsal and I'm head of contemporary music at Southbank Center. So I'm responsible for programming all music, non-classical music there across all venues. In terms of how COVID-19 had an impact on you, personally, I'm quite happy to be working from home, I should say. But on a business level, it has been drastic, of course. And we have been closed since 17th of March. And we put out a press release yesterday as well. We kind of wanted to sound out the alarm that if the government support stays as it is, we're going to be facing, not just us, all the live music and culture institutions will have such big impact. Like we will be facing, if we don't do anything, and if we go through our physically distant concerts for autumn and winter, the way that it is being proposed right now, we would be losing like 11 million pounds. And it looks like if we don't do anything, we will be having a deficit of 5 million pounds.
Okay, I mean, I think we'll definitely get back into sort of talking a bit more broadly about venues shortly, actually. But thanks for that. Ruth.
Hey. So I'm Ruth Barlow. I'm the Director of Live Licensing of the Beggars Group of labels. We're a big independent group of labels that include 4AD, Matador, Rough Trade, Excel and Young Turks. Personally speaking, I sort of love the lockdown. I'm staggered by how much I can achieve in a day, as well as get all work done. I can do personal care, exercising, learn languages and do stuff like that. It's fantastic. All from the comfort of my own home. But, you know, obviously from a business perspective, it's been really challenging, actually. You know, we've obviously, you know, selling records is an online thing these days. Streams, everything happens online. So that's not been too difficult, but we also sort of have quite a significant physical business. And, you know, the impact, you know, undoubtedly has been staggering as well on the artists themselves and all those sort of like people that, you know, congregate around an artist, whether it's their crew, the musicians, the venue. So just sort of like, you know, trying to come up with solutions, certainly in my area, trying to come up with solutions about how they can retain their live business. And yeah, I mean, it's just been pretty crazy, actually. And I know I'm going to sound like one of those wankers who keeps on saying, oh, it's so busy in coronavirus. But it really has been very busy when when your job is live music licensing and all anyone wants to talk about is live streaming and live music. So yeah, it's been pretty varied and continues to be a bit of a roller coaster.
Thank you. Sumit, maybe can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the last 2 months?
Yeah, sure. My name's Sumit Bothra. I'm one of the senior partners at ATC Management. We're a music management company. We have offices in LA and in London and a satellite office over in Copenhagen. We also have a live agency, ATC Live. The live agency looks after tours for about 300 to 400 artists. And management side of the business, managing 60 artists of all shapes and sizes. And I think as much as we are weathering the storm, we've really pulled together as a company, which has been a beautiful thing. It has presented certain challenges, which we are overcoming on a weekly basis. But I think the most beautiful thing that happens, I think, when you go through a shared experience like this with all of your partners around the world, is how wonderful the human spirit comes to the fore. And I think that's been the most amazing thing for me. It's not just about having more time and having a busier day and all that stuff, but it's the amount of interactions that I'm having either by phone or over calls or video calls, whatever. It's just that kind of interaction has been priceless.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, and last but certainly not least, DJ Yoda, aka Duncan. Where are you going?
Yep, well, I'm Duncan Beattie, aka DJ Yoda. I'm a DJ and producer, but I would say that 90% of my income comes from live shows. So the coronavirus thing has completely decimated that for me, which has been really difficult to deal with, actually. And certainly amongst the kind of DJs and producers that I know and the bubble that I'm within, everyone's been faced with the same problem. And try to kind of think on their feet as quickly as possible to try and work out how to move forward, because we've all got bills to pay, families to support, and all of that stuff. So whilst on a completely personal lifestyle level, I am actually kind of enjoying the lockdown. The simplicity of it is great compared to the logistics of having to get around the world every week, which is what normally happens for me. Yeah, the financial side of it is a disaster, frankly, that we're trying to navigate my way through.
Have you always had as much selection for your breakfast cereals as you have behind you as well?
I think all DJs are collectors in one way or another, and most DJs collect something outside of music as well. But that breakfast cereal is my particular penchant.
There you go. Sumit, just coming back to you. So, in terms of sort of artist management, what would you say? What's sort of been the immediate impact of coronavirus in terms of your day-to-day activities?
The impact has been pretty significant, as you can imagine, particularly as for those artists who were planning a substantial amount of touring this year. So our job as managers is to find solutions to difficult problems. I mean, that's what we do. We do it day in, day out. So what we can't afford to do is panic. We take a look at what the impact is of that problem, and we try and find solutions to mitigate that. So that, you know, the beautiful thing about, I guess, managing recording artists is that the world will always need music. The world will always need wonderful songs. And as long as we can encourage our artists to stay creative, and while they're doing that, we can find inventive ways to keep the lights on for them financially, which means leveraging all of the relationships in that artist ecosystem, and we're doing our jobs appropriately. And you know, the impact on a case-by-case basis obviously depends on the nature of the artist and what that artist activity was going to be for the year. So I think what we're trying to be is as entrepreneurial and industrious as possible at every turn, and to encourage our artists to do exactly the same, and for them to know that you know, they are looked after by us in our safe hands, and not just us as their immediate managers, but the community that we all exist in here. Everyone on this call exists in the music business community, and it's amazing how this entire group of people has really come together to support not just the artists, but everyone else that works alongside them or for them.
Ruth, are you seeing that as well on your side from a label point of view, that kind of sense of collaboration and people being very much in it together?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, but then without a doubt, there's little ructions going on. I don't know whether everyone's seen the hashtag Broken Records thing going on. I think there are little pockets of, just protests that would be going on anyway. Obviously, the coronavirus lockdown, as Duncan said, has shone a huge light on a massive part of the industry, which is the live industry, which has been the bread and butter of live performers, or all performers, for the last decade. So, we as a company, not only, like Sumit said, people are always going to want beautiful songs and music, and it's up to us to encourage our artists to be creative, and we can still continue putting out the records, but that doesn't get away from the fact there's a huge amount of income missing from those individual artists' lives, livelihoods and careers. So there's definitely going to be an impact on our business eventually, maybe not right now. I mean, it's just been the challenge of access, I can't believe the amount of sort of like innovative activity that's going on. We had one of our artists, whilst we've been releasing albums during this time, I mean, we had Sleaford Mods get a top 10 album last week because they've been, because their lead singer's just gone a bit mad on Twitter and Instagram and started sort of like engaging with audiences in that way. Perfume Genius did a New York Times feature on Long Lens from his sort of like, garden. So there's been all these sort of like bonkers things happening to try and sort of like maintain a status quo, but with the reality that we're, all having to sort of like come up and be challenged about how we're going to continue working together. Certainly in my area on the live side, it's been ominously quiet on the live promoter and agent side of things. I think that they're going to that sector's definitely going to need some help in the coming, years, as Bengi sort of like said.
I totally agree. Obviously, I sort of have a few different hats, and one of them is being involved in the UK Live Music Group and UK Music, and we're spending a lot of time at the moment speaking to government and really lobbying hard for the sector. And there's a release that came out a couple of weeks ago where there's an estimated £900 million loss in the UK alone just to the end of the year on the value of the live industry. And I think as employers in the sector as well, you're talking about tens of thousands of people that are employed at agencies, promoters, venues, and as Bengi sort of touched on, all relying on the furlough scheme at the moment to keep them in jobs. So what happens when that runs out? And I think there's a lot of concern across the industry about the ending of any of the kind of current government support and the industry being able to restart. And I think there's a pretty big gap there. Ruth.
About it's not going to be able to just restart again. As Bengi said again, it's this social distancing is going to have an impact far beyond the now. It's going to be, a midterm loss. It's going to be a long-term loss. You can bet your bottom dollar, even with reduced capacities, there's going to be less touring because probably plane tickets are going to be too expensive. Tickets are going to have to become expensive to sort of like cut the losses. So essentially, we're going to have to sort of like look at ways of keeping this business alive, but not in a physical sense. So yeah, it's pretty bonkers for those guys.
Yeah, I completely agree. Bengi, back to you on a sort of Southbank and venue sort of front. Ruth just touched on social distancing. So what's your feeling at the moment on social distancing and whether, like, how it might work in venues for shows?
I mean, for seated venues like us, normally Southbank, Royal Festival Hall, Queen Elizabeth Hall, being seated, we always thought it was a disadvantage, mostly for festivals like Meltdown and rock and roll artists and such. But we at these times actually presents itself to be an advantage in a way, because it's much easier to socially distant people in a seated venue. But having looked at numbers, it takes we've looked at the stage occupancy rate, how many people can we put on the stage, how can we get them in, how does the backstage look, how do we get the audiences in the venues, how can we make it sterile, how much does it cost, how much time it takes, etc. And how many people can we have in the venue effectively. It's going to be 30%. And that actually doesn't, even if it covered the expenses, let's say, of that particular event, as I just mentioned before, it doesn't actually cover the costs of keeping the venues alive and just like operating in a level. So because it's not just the event costs that we have, and our budgets were not set up to run that way. As I said, we lost 60%. And I know that because we're talking to other venues, we're talking to all the promoters through Concert Promoters Association, and our CEO is in touch with all the other institutions at the moment. And we know for a fact that it's not actually feasible for most of the venues and promoters at the moment, unfortunately.
I know there's obviously there's been a lot of work that's being done, across the industry at the moment on the possibilities of reopening venues, what that might look like. I had a question from Amy, who asked what everyone's thoughts are on whether live music venues will survive, particularly grassroots venues. Obviously, Bengi, talking about the Southbank, it's a much larger venue, but I know that you're very much involved in the kind of grassroots scene as well with some music venue trusts and other things that you do. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, are they sort of two very separate things, the bigger venues and the smaller venues? And how do you see the plight of grassroots venues, in the coming months?
I don't see them at all different. Grassroots venues, as you say, I am a part of, I'm in the board for Music Venue Trust. It's grassroots venues and grassroots music. Supporting it from the bottom up is something that I passionately believe in. So there may be at more danger than us. And that means if we cannot support the grassroots venues and the grassroots music and the grassroots artists, then we won't have anyone to basically have in our venues going up, because we have, like, Southbank is a big venue, but we have that grassroots mentality to ourselves as well. We do 40% of our events free, we try to nurture talent, etc. But Music Venue Trust has been doing an awful lot of work since this first started. They've raised quite a lot of money. They've got, I don't want to give the wrong number right now, but I think it's more than £1 million right now to support all the grassroots venues. And I have an email from Mark, actually, David, in my inbox right now, which I'm going to look after, where we look at all the requests from venues and look how we can actually support them as Music Venue Trust. So yes, it is a very, very important topic, I think, and I don't think it can be separated.
I think I mean, I might be wrong on the figures, but I think the numbers at the moment, I think originally it was sort of 560 venues that were really under immediate threat of closure. And I think there's been 140 that are now kind of off that imminent danger list, which is great news. But obviously, we're still talking about over 400, small venues, which need sort of help fairly desperately. Sumit, from just to come back to you, from your point of view, looking at kind of how important are those grassroots spaces for your artists? When you're planning careers, when you're bringing people through.
They're absolutely essential, and Bengi's right. The Save Our Venues campaign hashtag, I think it's raised just over £1 million so far, and has brought some of those venues into slightly healthier places. But those venues, they are really struggling. My heart bleeds for them, to be honest with you, because without those venues on the grassroots that are really at the forefront of cultural shifts, it not just in this country but all over the world. Artists. They tour every show, so it's not just about independent venues here in the UK. It's independent venues all over the world. They're essential part of the DNA of growing an artist.
Yeah.
And it's not as simple as to just think, well, they can put cameras in their rooms and pivot into films. They have supply issues where they've got supplies in their venues that they don't know what to do with. They can't monetize their spaces because they're on rent holidays, etc., etc. So they are in very, very difficult waters, for sure. And anything that we can do or artists can do to help them or support them, we absolutely should, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Duncan, just sort of moving slightly to the kind of dance scene, the club scene. So can you sort of summarize something of the impact there? Are people in sort of similar dire straits as the live venues are?
Yeah, I think people have been scrambling around trying to work out what the kind of new normal is going to be and how to continue. And there's been things are changing really fast, and it seems like every day kind of things are developing. But I think there's been a lot of thought towards what platform, if you're live streaming, you should do that from, and there's pros and cons to all the different platforms, and I think there's been an element of trial and error as people try and work out what's going to work for them on different platforms. And there's a great problem for DJs with copyright issues, especially with Facebook and Instagram. And I think there's this kind of disparity now between the technology and the law, as there often is in DJing, but it's really difficult for DJs to play on those bigger platforms and not get shut down for copyright issues. which leaves something like Twitch, which has really blown up in the same way that Zoom's blown up during this whole period, because something that started for gamers is people have realized, it's great for podcasts and it's great for music as well, actually. And certainly tech-wise, I think that's a great platform for people to DJ off, but it's quite difficult to get people off the platforms they used to, whether that's Instagram or whatever. And then there's been the issue of how to monetize that if you're a DJ and to try and make some income. There are various ways of doing it. I think if you're super organized and you've got a lot of content that you're holding onto, then Patreon's a good way of doing it, because you can get fans of yours to subscribe, but you really need to have stuff to offer them in order for that model to work. What I've been doing is there's a website called Ko-fi, Ko-fi, which is essentially accepting digital tips from people. It's busking essentially, so that's what it's returned to, which is, on the one, it's humbling, but there's something quite nice about it as well, and it's also been an eye-opener in a lot of ways. It's been interesting that there's been times over the last couple of weeks when I've DJed to 10,000 people on one platform, but that's been through a music production channel or something like that. And at other points where I've been DJing to a couple of hundred people just off my own Instagram. And for those digital tips, I'm getting 100 times more tips from the couple of hundred people that I'm playing to than I did from playing to 10,000 people. So it's been really interesting. Also, just from a creative level, it's been really interesting as a DJ, because you suddenly taken away this pressure to keep people on the dance floor, which means that musically you can go anywhere. There's no worry about kind of playing popular songs to get basically, if someone's interested in what you're doing, they're going to be watching. So you're only playing to people that care, which is lovely, because half the battle as a DJ is you're trying to win over the people that aren't convinced in the room in the real world. So here you're kind of, that everyone that's there has an interest, and it really frees you up creatively. I think all the DJs have had to learn software for streaming, and how to, DJs have suddenly become coders and TV producers and editors, learn all these skills really quickly. So it's really interesting. And I think it's been actually creatively and technically very satisfying, if not financially.
I was going to ask actually, is it, in terms of the finances, is it a sustainable model to live from, or it's back to your busking point?
Yeah, unfortunately, whilst it seems like it started well, and I thought if it carries on like this or snowballs, I'll be fine, but it doesn't. I don't think you can realistically ask people to keep tipping you for months upon end. So it's been nice to do, but I don't think it's the way forward. I think a lot of DJ producers are looking to things like Bandcamp, where you can just make a quick buck, basically, by selling music at really cheap prices. Again, not a very sustainable model, I don't think. I think it's really difficult, and there's a lot of people in my shoes who are trying to work out what to do still.
I think probably the single sort of biggest thing to come out of this whole situation is definitely the explosion of live streaming. I think everyone would probably agree. And the amount that's kind of been done, the profiles of people that are doing it. Ruth, obviously, this is very much kind of your bread and butter, right? This is what you do sort of day in, day out. But to Duncan's point about the platforms and copyright not having quite sort of caught up, or not quite kind of working at the moment, would you say that's true? Are there still sort of barriers at the moment with live streaming?
There are huge barriers, none more so because, Duncan mentioned Twitch, but a lot of our artists, and one artist in particular, is doing quite a lot of broadcasting on Twitch, and we can't stop them, because I think it's definitely a time where I'm having to bite my tongue a bit with the policies that I've been setting for about a decade with artists. But Twitch is one of them. My argument with Twitch would be, yes, it is a great platform, it is a gaming platform, it seems to be a great place where artists can communicate with their audiences, where DJs can DJ their sets, but it's unlicensed. It's unlicensed with the publishers, it's unlicensed with the rights holders, and it's owned by Amazon. So, for me, I think that the onus there would be that Amazon would want it to become a legitimate site for people to be able to legitimately use it, in the same way that Instagram and Facebook should be as well. Currently, they're not licensed for those sorts of uses. But, you know, there are, you know, getting back to Duncan about, you know, this being a great creative challenge, there are platforms now that have come up over the parapet. I know this because I've spoken to most of them over the last few weeks, who are offering, you know, paywalled platforms where you can, say for example, Duncan, you can do a regular DJ night. Obviously you've still got the rights issues there. You need to go and, you know, clear all your rights to the tracks that you play. But, you know, there are places out here, or there are platforms out there. I mean, currently I think Mixcloud announced some innovations in the last few weeks where they can, I think they can now, I don't think they've got paywall, but they can definitely live stream audio and visual on your DJ sets. And that's one of the only legitimate sites out there who has all the licenses in place to be able to, you know, not get you shut down. But, you know, there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of stuff going on in this space for sure. What was the question again, Greg?
Live streaming.
Go off again.
I mean, I've been sort of blown away really by just the speed at which that whole you know, live streaming is accelerated by, you know, and I think obviously without the coronavirus, it's something that I guess we would be in the situation, but we certainly wouldn't be where we are with it at the moment.
No, I mean, I think I did a couple of interviews. I think I did a couple of interviews for your magazine actually, and said, who would have thought that an international pandemic would actually be the sea change that I've been looking for in my work. You know, trying to make people see that there's value in live streaming. You know, it's not, you know, for years I've been sort of like arguing, it's just, you know, that it's not just a promotional add-on to a live event. It could be the event itself. And I think that's what we're seeing. So, you know, without meaning to be very smug, because I know that there's a lot of people suffering, I feel very vindicated in all the work that I've been doing for a decade, but also very excited about the potential business that's going to come out of this. None more so than for the artists directly, you know. There are solutions out there so they can plug the gap to their live, you know, their live business. So in a way, out of this has come a great opportunity.
But do you see live streaming as being something that complements live music when it comes back, or is it a potential replacement?
Absolutely. I've never ever saw it as a replacement. I mean, definitely, as we've already touched upon, in the short term, social distancing is going to make regular touring, you know, prohibitively expensive and impossible in a lot of ways. You know, in the midterm, I still think there's going to be a huge swathes of population who are going to be uneasy about going out into sort of like big events or into public spaces. You know, the appetite for live music is not gone away. So, you know, what's the sensible thing to do? It's make it go online. And I mean, I think I've seen definitely by looking at this area very closely after the last few weeks, people are now, they've gone beyond that donations, tip jar, busking thing to actually being able to sell tickets to great live events. Now, I think that the emphasis now needs to be, let's move it from the bedroom, let's get into venues, let's create these sort of like brilliant moments that people will want to pay for. And I think that's definitely what's happening. I mean, Sumit over at ATC, you guys are doing the Laura Marlin show. I know there's you know, we've got an artist involved in something, you know, with those guys as well. You know, it's all I've ever worked for to justify that this could be an ancillary business for us and for the artists. And even when things do get back to normal, whether that's months or a year down the line, I still think there's going to be, you know, there's going to be space for this to be a thing, you know, you know, because there's territories, there's small towns, there's, you know, special events, there's what this is a universal access, and that's fantastic for the fans, I think.
Sumit, could you just speak a little bit about the Laura Marlin show? I mean, it's coming up, isn't it? It's certainly an exciting one.
Yeah, I think that's that really is an exercise in can you all hear me okay? Sorry, I know my internet's super glitchy where I am at the moment. I think it is an exercise in, look, everything that we're doing right now is we're trying different things. We're working with instinct. We want to be able to, I think if you're going to sell tickets and sell an experience to your audience, wherever in the world that audience is, you have to be able to give them as high quality an experience as possible. So, this isn't, this is trying to move away from kind of bedroom live streams, which is fine. It's a beautiful thing. And there are bedroom live streams galore, but this is about, treating this as an experience in and of itself. It is its own thing. So how do we take an artist, put that artist into a beautiful space, deliver a wonderfully produced and shot experience and deliver that to the fans, and make it worth their time, their effort, their money, and be able to make that an engaging, albeit remote experience for them all. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg, because, that there are how many different types of artists in the world, all shapes and sizes, and that goes for DJs and those in the electronic music space too. We have to get our thinking caps on and be able to deliver really inventive, immersive experiences. And that's what we're spending an awful lot of time doing. On top of that, there are technological issues that need to be resolved, and there are many people in the tech space that are working incredibly hard trying to resolve them. And as Ruth said earlier, this also presents new rights issues that needs to be addressed, but that's all part of the fun. It's like, okay, well then let's all duke it out and figure it out, but at least we're figuring it out together. And that means that we are engaging in a transparent, honest dialogue. And that's really, really important. And I think that's also part of the evolution that comes with this type of situation. It's collaborative, and that's the way it should be.
Thank you. Is anyone putting pressure on Amazon and Facebook, Instagram, etc., to sort out copyright collections so that artists and composers can actually make an income from live streaming? Maybe that's one back for Ruth, actually, to go back to you.
Yeah, the pressure's on, but whether people are listening or not, that's another matter. At the moment, live streaming tends to sit aside from the usual streaming agreements.
Okay, cool, thank you. Bengi, just to go back to you quickly, thinking about live streaming and all of those empty venue spaces, I mean, is this something that you guys are looking at, utilizing the venue space that you have to actually have those kind of good quality, great, great kind of definition streamings happen?
Certainly. Yeah, we're planning and investigating again as well. We have multiple venues. We have really high-end technical capacity in Southbank Center, amazing people. So we do have the space, and we know that we have the know-how to an extent. And yes, we're definitely looking into it.
Cool, thank you. So it sounds like everyone's, just generally very positive about the potential for live streaming, albeit that, maybe the quality needs to improve slightly. There's a few issues to iron out. Aside from that, though, I mean, where are you guys seeing the opportunities in the kind of current crisis at the moment? Are there other areas that you think that other things that you've seen where you're like, actually, that's really cool. This is potentially something that could be kind of interesting to explore more, or it's a little bit game changing. I don't have anyone specifically to ask, so you might have to put your hand up. Duncan.
Just a small thing, but it's, I guess one of the USPs that I've got as a DJ is that I work with video, so I'm mixing and scratching video stuff as well. And I've already had a few inquiries about bookings for drive-in cinema type gigs where people stay in their cars and the music goes from car to car. So that sounds really interesting as one specific route to take. Yeah, to see what it will actually be like, because in the back of my head I'm feeling like, will people actually stay in their cars? Like, it's going to be have to be enforced quite hard. But I thought that sounded like an innovative idea.
There's been a few of these, actually. I think that they're doing them in Denmark and Germany and Austria. I think that they just announced a few around the UK actually as well. And also I think Italy now is looking at starting the first ride-in concert with bicycles. So you go into a venue and then your bike is kind of what means, your bike is socially distancing you from the person next to you, which I thought was, potentially a nice sort of eco-friendly solution to a driving concert. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it works with alcohol very well.
Certainly not driving concerts, no.
It'll be like Friday night in Groningen at Eurosonic, everyone just falling over their bicycle.
Can you imagine? I mean, I really want to go just to see what it's like. Bengi, over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's very important to observe the customer behavior right now, and that it will change. It is changing at the moment, and that will kind of show us what kind of new innovations and new business models can come out of this. So maybe it's just like we all jumped into the live streaming or recorded streaming, the digital sphere right now. But I am sure if we look closely enough in the coming months, we can find really interesting other opportunities as well. I don't know what they are at the moment. And if I had known, I would not say it's here as well. But I think there's definitely value in looking at it.
I think it's probably fair to say that everybody's looking at the same thing. Sumit.
I'd also maybe just add to that, opportunity isn't and shouldn't always be equated with commercial success or commerciality. Opportunity comes in many, many, many forms, and artistic opportunity especially is born and should be born in the absence of commercial impact, really. It's a matter of expression. So when you start thinking about what are the new opportunities, what's the most amazing thing, despite all of the hardships that a global pandemic has obviously presented, not just to us, we to some degree are relatively well shielded compared to the vast majority of people on the planet. What that shared experience has done is it has leveled the playing field in terms of the humans' ability to communicate with other humans. When I speak to anyone on the planet now about work, we have something immediately common that binds us, all of us, and that goes for every single person here that's attending and elsewhere. And from that connective tissue, beautiful collaboration will come, artistic collaboration will come, and artists are at the forefront of that movement, as they always have been from the moment humans ended up on the planet and could speak to each other. So I think that's the stuff that really excites me. How you ultimately then commercialize those things in order to help people make a living and improve upon that work and amplify it to a wider audience. For me, in a way, it's somewhat secondary. I love the fact that we're looking at commercial solutions because we need to be, because there's a financial crisis. But equally, I'm excited by all of the other opportunities that are presenting themselves now, with artists speaking to others, not just in their own lane, but others that are in their entire planetary ecosystem, looking for ways to engage with each other. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and long may it continue.
I could absolutely wholeheartedly agree. And I think, even on a much smaller kind of microcosmic level, take this panel. This panel wouldn't have happened if without coronavirus. And the fact is, there are people tuning in from potentially all around the world, having a shared experience, having a shared conversation. That conversation would never have happened before. So I think that the possibility for connection is something that's, I think, is quite astounding, really, and that how that's been sort of sped up really by the situation that we're in. So, just going to moving on. I've got a question here from J Bowles, who says, "Thanks very much. This has been extremely informative. Very good to hear. COVID crisis will change the way we program and produce live performances. However, there is a risk to the logistics of live performance due to Brexit, which has gone under the radar at the moment. Any thoughts on how venues, managers, and artists themselves will approach Brexit?" Essentially a difficult question. Bengi, I'm going to go back to you as the venue person in the room.
I still think it will be secondary, because I really don't know when an international artist will be able to fly to London, or when I will be able to fly to Istanbul to see my parents, for instance. So it's just like the first thing that we were, of course, looking at Brexit. We were looking at how the artists would carry all that stuff here. How would they need visas and everything? And we are definitely looking at that as well. But at the moment, I would say it needs to stay secondary until we know what's going to happen next. When are we going to open? When are we going to be able to function properly?
Yeah. Yeah. Ruth, have you had any discussions about sort of Brexit or the mothballing of Brexit as far as music industry concerns are at the moment?
I'm pretty sure that those conversations will still be ongoing as they were for a million years before COVID. But, you know, like Bengi says, you know, some things are more important. And at the moment, I think this has maybe put that very much into blurred focus in the background until we actually can ascertain some, you know, simple facts is, you know, are people going to be able to cross borders? You know, and will live music venues be open for them to come and play? So yeah, I mean, all of those issues that we were talking about before exist, but right now they're not in focus.
Okay. Sumit, back to you on that just quickly. I mean, obviously as an artist manager, you sit across an artist's career entirely. Have you had any internal discussions about, you know, Brexit recently, or has it been sort of put to one side?
No, there's only so much bandwidth. We haven't at all. You know, we discussed an awful lot around Brexit, particularly as it pertains to live and the live industry. But at the moment, you know, for the most part, and not everywhere in the world, but for the most part, anyone flying into a country is technically quarantined for 14 days. So, you know, you have much bigger issues really at stake here than, you know, that's simply a human logistics issue, right? That's taking the artist and putting them aside for 14 days before they can even perform. You know, that is very much secondary. I think right now, what is happening and what probably needs to happen are local solutions. There needs to be local solutions before you start finding global ones, as far as people congregating in spaces and the live music sector is concerned. And we're already seeing that, you know, different countries are dealing with concerts and concert promotions in very different ways. So yeah, Brexit, sorry, you're gonna have to wait on that one.
All right, good stuff. Thanks for that. Duncan, to come back to you. So, I mean, looking ahead, obviously, you know, we're in this kind of slightly, well, completely kind of bizarre period right now where people, I think, are still trying to get their heads around it a little bit. But looking ahead, you know, a couple of years, like, how do you see the kind of club scene, the sort of DJ scene being affected by the situation that we're in? Is it just going to go back to being business as usual? Or if not, what might change?
I mean, there's no doubt that it will go back to business as usual eventually. No one can tell how long that's going to be, and I suspect it's quite a far way off. And I think, disappointingly, there's not going to be a magic moment where suddenly everything's just back the way it was. I think it's going to be very gradual, and I think it's going to make for some quite weird events over the coming year or two as people adjust, because I think, like everything, like everyone in this environment, you kind of choose where you sit on the spectrum with what you're comfortable with. That's why you sometimes encounter these kind of awkward conversations in the street, like, oh, you're not social distancing. You know, everyone's deciding how comfortable they are on a personal level with it. And I think that it will go on like that. So I can imagine that whilst there's some people that are ready now to go out and, you know, would love to go to a music festival given half the chance, most people wouldn't. And that's going to be a gradual thing that filters out. So what it's going to make for is some, frankly, kind of half full events. And I think that might have to be the case anyway. You know, I think I'm envisioning situations where perhaps I'm playing in small venues that are allowed half the capacity that they're normally allowed, and I do 2 or 3 performances per night. And that might be one way that it will be for a while. None of these things, frankly, sound great atmosphere-wise. But I think it's the only way to kind of like dip your toe and start getting back into it. I do think things will go back to normal, perhaps with some added kind of live streaming stuff going on that we've discovered along the way. But I think we're entering this kind of unknown length period of it being weird, frankly.
But do you think, I mean, is it possible to socially distance in a club though, when you're, you know, kind of dancing, having a good time and getting into the music?
If there are laws on capacity that keep it half empty, which will ruin the atmosphere as it is. So,
yeah.
You know, I think it's different. Like Bengi was saying, like if you've got a seated venue, it's actually a kind of better way of doing it because there's a greater sense of control physically. But yeah, things like festivals and clubs, the only way I can foresee it happening, other than everyone having their own zorbing ball, which I like the idea of. It creates toileting problems.
Yeah, or some sort of hula hoop that you attach to your head that sort of comes out equally around you or something, you know. It's interesting actually, IQ published a story today with the results of a survey from Fest Ticket, which they surveyed 110,000 festival goers, and 82% are ready to go back. Like if they could, people want to go back, which I think is it's a really positive statistic, because actually it shows that demand for live shows is definitely still there, even if logistically it's not possible at the moment. And I think it's something that that the whole industry should be sort of quite kind of heartened about, really. That people, there will still be music, there'll still be performances, people still want to go and stand in a field next to each other and connect and have a beer and enjoy the same thing as each other. It's a sort of a spiritual kind of communal experience. But I don't know, I mean, Bengi, I was going to move it to you. Like, how do you see things changing over the next couple of years? What's the impact going to be once we can put shows on again?
You mean impact on what exactly? On our business or our?
Yeah, on the business, whether that's obviously in terms of the actual business, the deals themselves, or whether it's in terms of the performance and the experience.
Yeah, I think Sumit might comment on this better and more in-depth knowledge he has, but I think the artists are going to reconsider how they represent themselves. I think it's probably going to come back to a little bit the core again, the music, the artist, maybe not too many big light shows, and limited costs for the time being in the next 2-3 years, because they've lost a lot of money. They lost tour cycles and they have to get them back. In terms of customer behavior, the audience behavior, I don't know. I mean, will they want to go out? If I go out to London Fields yesterday, it was like All Points East there, or Field Day there. Like, it was so crowded. So the young audiences are still out there socializing. So maybe the programming might go into a little bit of a younger demographic. But then again, also in terms of businesses, I do agree with Ruth that I think the live streaming or the recorded streaming or digital VR, whatever we call it, all those different types of experiences, I think they're here to stay, and they're definitely gonna get better as in terms of when the technology gets better and catches up with this CTO that is COVID suddenly. When that catches up, it will, when it starts giving better experiences to audiences, I think that business is going to grow as well, and we're going to have to adapt to it. Yeah, I think in terms of, but I think also what the agent does, what the promoter does, what the management, how that business model is kind of formed, that might, I think, might change. I don't know. I mean, you comment, but from a venue and a promoter perspective, I think with the digital coming in, artists keeping their rights, wanting to keep their rights to themselves, and us becoming more self-sustaining in the past months, I think that model might change as well.
Okay, thank you. I had a question from Amy, who's asked, talking about kind of clubs, bars, and pubs not wanting to open until they're able to operate at full capacity. At 50% capacity, they're hastening their closure, which I think is something that you touched on earlier, Bengi, in terms of not being able to run at 30%. How can venues be helped to survive? Yeah,
I don't know. With donations, with government help, yeah, we have to, or with sponsors. Like, I think people, the artists, the audiences, the companies, the government, they need to just stick to us with a longer solution. It's not going to happen straight away. So they have to basically say, okay, we're giving you the support now so that you can support the whole thing, the whole industry, the whole country, like in the next 2 years, when everything goes back to the new normal. Because right now, because the hospitality industry is really pretty much damaged with this as well, for us, for our finances, and I know the other promoters' finances, it doesn't look, unfortunately, feasible with the numbers that we have.
Okay, thank you. Another question here from Orchid, who asks, what do you foresee, this is what I want for Sumit, what do you foresee being an equivalent for newer artists still building an audience, an equivalent of growing a fan base through playing small venues? So I guess the question is, is there an alternative way to grow a fan base?
Yeah, I think the artist community is way ahead of us on that, way ahead. I mean, most artists grow their communities online well before they set foot in a venue. Most do these days, and in fact, most people within the industry that exists to amplify the careers of artists generally look to what they're doing online before they even think about signing them and taking them on. And that's even agents that are putting them in those clubs, or record labels that are signing them to deals, or publishers that are signing their song rights. So look, man, you know, young artists are brilliant. They are brilliant. They are resourceful. Many of them have never bought a ticket and set foot in a live venue before. They will find their way. Their venue is in the palm of their hand, and it holds far more people than any stadium you can think of. You know, that is their audience, that is their venue, and they will make that work. What will become a novelty for them is moving that experience into a physical space. Much like vinyl is now a novelty. It's a beautiful thing to buy a piece of vinyl after we went through a huge download and streaming revolution. Now let's have something in the physical space, and we'll pay a premium for that. And it's a beautiful thing. So I think exactly the same thing will happen. It's just like YouTubers with millions and millions of subscribers eventually saying, you know what, I think I'll go on tour and go and run around some venues and see my fans. And that's just going to be fun. What a thrill. And then I'm going to go back home and make money the way I normally do, which is from my home studio.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's my take on that. And if I could, if you don't mind, just going back to what we were saying earlier about the future of venues. Look, we have to all accept that many, many businesses will close. They will. Many venues will close. Many artists will shut down and find new careers. Many people will be unemployed. This is just the reality of what is to come. We haven't even scratched the surface to understand the impacts, economical, social impacts of this pandemic. We have to accept that is just the way it is. But rather than be disabled by that, and rather than sit back and say, well, let's just wait and see where the chips fall, those that like us here on this call have to take a leadership position. We have to lead. We have to find solutions. We have to collaborate and work with others to find solutions, and talk to people that are outside of our sector to find those solutions. I mean, look at what's the airport industry doing right now? What's the real estate industry doing right now? How are they testing people when they come into the country? How are they testing people when they go out of the country? How can you create safe spaces for people to congregate in without them feeling the risk of infection? These are all the things we have to be really focused on figuring out. And the sooner we figure out these things, the sooner we can get people into these live experiences and enjoying life the way they used to, at least to a certain degree. And that's incumbent upon us to lead. So we should do that.
Great point. And we're fast running out of time. Actually, we've got 4 minutes left. So what I wanted to do was just go around each of you guys in turn and just ask you, what's the most positive thing that you've taken from this whole situation? And also, what are you most looking forward to kind of when things get back to a little bit of normality? So Duncan, I'm going to start with you. I'm very sorry you've had no time to think about this answer. So.
Right. Well, I think it's quite easy talking about the positive aspects of it. I found those things came first, actually. It's been creatively really a satisfying period, actually. I've been, I've figured out so much technological ways of moving forward with the streaming stuff to really try and make my stream stuff set apart from other people's. And having that freedom that I was talking about to not feel constricted to the same old stuff to make people happy when you're playing, that's been really satisfying as well. There's been time to make music. That's great as well. It's been a great time to get, I mean, so much of my creative work is collaborative, and the main thing that holds that up, or that held that up pre-coronavirus, was getting hold of people. Now I know everyone's at home. That's great. It's been really great for pinning people down that you want, you know, vocals from, or whatever it is.
The curse of home working. People can always reach you.
Exactly. No one's got any excuses. So that's been really nice. I also think I've taken a lot from it, understanding who's following me and what they want. It was really interesting to me. I've been running Twitter polls every week for what I play on Instagram that week. So giving people 4 choices of, well, I could do an AV show, I could play an all reggae set, I can do anything, and just getting that kind of like market research done. It's been really interesting. It's surprising in some points what people want from me. So that's been interesting as well. What was the second part of the question?
The thing you're most looking forward to kind of going back to normal?
Well, I think that's an easy question to answer and quite predictable. It's going to be very satisfying to be on a stage in front of thousands of people and have everyone back in that environment. Like I said, though, I suspect it's not going to come suddenly. And I don't know how long it will take, but it will be a great moment when it finally gets there.
Thank you. Ruth, over to you.
It's so difficult. I think just the communication. I think the new peeled back of way of working. I've definitely adjusted to it better than I thought I would. And it's just made me able to focus on what my job is. Finding people's solutions. Not getting all meshed up in all the minutiae of all the bullshit that offices come along with. It's been just great to focus on problem solving, research properly, and just talking to people in a very different sort of way. I mean, in terms of what I'm looking forward to when things get back to normal, it's moving to a place where there's possibly a beach nearby and being able to know that I can still do my job properly.
Fantastic. Okay, Sumit, over to you.
I think in terms of positives or how it's changed me, I guess I don't commute every day. I used to commute 4 hours a day. I live in Brighton. Our office is in London, so it's a lot of time traveling. So it's nice not to be doing that. Probably what I found most rewarding, like Ruth said, is just the amount of, and probably for everyone on this call, the amount of communication has been amazing. Like, we love to communicate anyway. But just to be able to do that en masse with people all over the world to talk about a whole bunch of different things has been amazing. Being able to spend time and be more available for younger people in our industry is really important to me too. So artists, young managers, spending a lot of time with my management community, all very rewarding things, and being able to spend loads of time with my 3 daughters and my mom, my family. That's been amazing. And then in terms of what I can't wait to do when I get back out there, I guess the simple things, spend time with some friends at the pub and have a laugh, and drink some pints. That'll be a beautiful thing. Simple pleasures.
Pub gardens for me every time. It's the thing I'm missing the most in the summer. Bengi, over to you. Final word.
To me, it has been, I love remote working and the fact that we can work from anywhere in the world, actually, not just our homes right now, and that everybody knows that it's actually really efficient way of getting things done. I love that. I love just personal development. I've been doing a lot of online courses, reading a lot. I've never had the time to do that. Commute takes 2 hours of my day as well. And it's just been, I think, very rewarding. And last but not least, I think I love the neighbor interaction that I have. I never knew my neighbors. Now we're just like helping each other. If somebody's feeling poorly, we go and shop for them. And when we're clapping for NHS on a Thursday night, I just look around and then we just wave at each other. It's really nice. I know my neighbor now. Amazing. And what I'm kind of looking forward to is swimming and the massage.
Great answer. Fantastic answer. Well, look, I just wanted to say a very big thank you to each of you guys today for taking the time out to have a chat. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.